You said you were a thespian back in the day, right?
Oh, what now?
A thespian, and you did art. You did
Oh,
shows.
I did theater.
Yeah,
Yes,
theater.
yes, yes. I geography and history and economics did not seem to interest me, so I decided I would pair dramatic arts with my engineering course. Why not? A match made in heaven.
You're such a ham. I'm so glad I got that on recording.
Oh, you did.
All right. Welcome to the Pursuit of Progress podcast, y'all. My name's Trey. I have Dane with me, and we are just going to hop into some hot topics of the past week, covering several different things. So, without further ado, let's hop into it. First up on the docket is the Tesla Shareholder Day, specifically talking about the mystery vehicle that was brought up. Dane, thoughts?
I That was really exciting. I can't wait for the actual product unveiling to launch. The reason this matters is because one of the big problems with electric vehicles right now is that they're too expensive. And what happens to the demand of a vehicle as the price declines, the demand for that product at that particular price increases exponentially. So this is consistent with Tesla's master plan that they launched back in 2006, which was start at the top, at the higher end of the market and gradually work your way down. So they started off with a really expensive Roadster,
Mm,
then they launched the Model S and X, which were their premium vehicles around the 80 to anywhere from 80 to 120,000, and then Model 3 and Y came. That was the second generation platform. Now those started around 40,000 US dollars. And the demand for that is already in the millions of units per year. With this next vehicle, it's like we can have some speculation about what it's going to be. I think it's probably two vehicles, a smaller version of the Model 3, like a smaller sedan, and then a smaller version of the Model Y,
mm,
which is the best selling vehicle at the moment. And what's so important about that is when I want to say it was their shareholder, not the shareholder day, but their investor day, they unveiled a new manufacturing process which will enable them to reduce the cost of manufacturing a vehicle by 50%.
yeah.
Okay, why is that so important? Martin Viecha, when he had the head of investor relations, uh, when he walked shareholders through, I think it was a factory tour. They did like an analyst day or something like that, um, and the cost to manufacture was around $36,000 across all of Tesla's vehicles. Okay, so cut that in half. Now you're looking at something that costs $38,000 to manufacture, maybe even less than that because it's probably going to be 50% cheaper than the 3 and Y platform.
Hmm.
And the 36,000 I think is including the S and X, which don't have some of the latest manufacturing techniques like all the work that they're doing on like castings. So now they've got a vehicle that can cost $18,000, maybe less than $18,000 to produce. They can sell that at $25,000 a pop, and bang, that is smack bang in Toyota Camry, Corolla territory. And we already know that a new one of those vehicles new around $28,000 is on price parity with a $40,000 Model 3.
Hmm.
And when you look at total cost of ownership,
Right.
maintenance, gas, etc. So this is a massive game changer because it's going to make Teslas that much more affordable by going down the cost curve. Um, and it's really, I would be really worried if I was Toyota or Ford or GM or any of these legacy auto manufacturers because they can't even produce these premium vehicles profitably, let alone producing a cheaper mass market vehicle profitably.
Yeah.
So, really exciting for Tesla, but really concerning for everyone else.
Yeah. And this is all just talking about the car. itself, like manufacturing the car in the cheapest way possible, not even considering all the other advancements. We already talked about autonomous driving, right? So it's not even considering that massive piece of the puzzle of like, not only are you making the cheapest vehicle possible, but you're superpowering it with this amazing technology that these other manufacturers aren't even doing. They're just not even focusing on it. And so
Mhm.
uh, kind of like what we talked about the last time, it really is becoming a no-brainer. I I don't know. I'm also thinking about the previous. It wasn't the shareholder day. It was where had the two vehicles that were covered on that graphic. I'll put it on the screen, but it looked like it would be a cargo van. I don't know if that's going to be part of these two products, but you're thinking
Mhm.
it's going to be two. It'll be just a smaller versions of the Y and three, and not the
Yeah.
cargo vehicle.
Yeah, and it really comes down to volume for me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was between 4 to 5 million that they
Yeah,
expect
five
this.
million. Yeah.
Okay, 5 million. It's these two new vehicles. So, I mean, it could be, you're right, there was like a smaller car and there was a van. I it is possible that they could be forecasting maybe 4 to 4.5 million vehicles for the smaller vehicle, and then maybe 500,000 vans, because the van market is significant, is way smaller, is way smaller than
Uh, okay.
you know
I
what I
can
mean?
believe that.
So
Yeah, it's less consumer focused and yeah, more focused on business. But you're saying that from a B2B perspective, there's only a market for 500,000. You think? You might be right. I'm
no, there's
just
not. I don't think that, I mean, that's obviously not the size of the total market, but do we think that they'll be selling more vans than Model S and X combined? I don't know.
I think we also are thinking about it from the current automobile landscape without autonomous
Mhm.
driving, without those things in place. Like when you
Yeah.
have autonomous driving, now you're talking about these B2B businesses. They're not needing to have uh, they could have a massive fleet now. They don't need to have just enough of a fleet for drivers to be in them. Now someone like an Amazon could actually just go out and buy 500,000 of these trucks outright, um,
Hmm.
and make deliveries even more instantaneous,
Hmm.
because you're not having to hire 500,000 people to run those cars.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that'll be an interesting one to see unfold, because Amazon has obviously placed massive bets and orders with Rivian,
Yes,
who produces the R1T, which is their pickup truck, the R1S, which is their SUV, and then obviously the EDV, which is their electric delivery van. So I mean, Amazon already has hundreds of thousands
this is a bad
of
example.
orders with them. But well, okay, there's plenty of other players too. Walmart.
Yeah,
If you think of any of the transportation players, anyone that has a need for final mile delivery is going to need that. It just so happens to be that I think Amazon is probably one of the biggest ones, but UPS, FedEx,
yeah.
the U.S. Postal Service, all of those are potential customers. So I think that I'm sure that they'll unveil that, but just the way that they've spoken about it so far, they're talking about this next generation vehicle platform. I think it makes sense to maybe have the same platform producing similar cars,
Yeah.
the same way that it's essentially a very similar manufacturing process for a Model 3 and a Model Y, because they're the same platform. Yeah, there are differences in, like, some of the structural castings are only in the Model Y, but they're rolling it out to, I think, other products as well. But I think it makes sense from a manufacturing standpoint to use the same platform to make similar vehicles.
Yeah.
And I think there's also demand in the market for different types of vehicles. Some people prefer sedans, some people prefer SUVs, but I don't know. The Model Y is obviously selling a lot more than the Model 3. So it could be that they just make a smaller version of the Model Y, skip the smaller version of the sedan, and then maybe you're right. Maybe that second vehicle is the delivery van. Um, so it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I may be leaning on your side too, because if he's saying it's going to be two products, yet all he shows is a silhouette of one, it's probably fair to say that they're going to have a very similar silhouette, I guess.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and hmm, and I wonder if the play is less. Well, they obviously it's the aim is to make it cheaper, but is that the primary play, or is it to make a smaller version for maybe like an in for the robo taxi services, where
Bingo.
it's where the smaller version is just meant for the one-on-one. I can just call up my car whenever I want. The second one is for more like ride sharing. Um,
Yeah.
so.
That's another very interesting point that you bring up, Trey, because the second this it's a vehicle platform. So
Mhm.
what if they are designing two vehicles that are essentially the same on the outside, but one version is meant to be sold to consumers and one is going to be a dedicated robotaxi platform?
Mhm.
That could be very interesting as well. And from a manufacturing and business standpoint, I think that makes sense because you'll already have the manufacturing process for 90% of the vehicle, and the only things that need to change are the things that go inside.
Mhm.
So what they showed in the new way of manufacturing is to assemble pieces individually and only bring them together once. So in theory, most of those processes will stay the same. The only thing that you have to swap out is the things that go inside the vehicle. But compared to today, where it goes down the production line, but then they assemble things partly, paint it, disassemble it, put some other stuff in, and then reassemble everything.
Mhm.
That obviously wouldn't work for this type of product line. But if you're building everything into individual pieces and then just putting them all into the car at the same time, then it's only really one part of your production facility that needs to be different for the two different products. One being dedicated robotaxi design, and the other meant for obviously to be a consumer or passenger vehicle. So that maybe that is the two. Maybe that's also why they just showed one silhouette. Maybe it's because from the
Mhm.
outside they look the same, but on the inside they're really two products because one is purpose built for autonomy and one is a passenger vehicle. So
Dang.
time will tell. I'm so pumped. Uh, like as soon as they have that product launch, I am going to be on the site spamming the reservation button. No doubt. Um, so pumped. And then yeah, that's going to be such a huge catalyst for them if they do solve autonomy, because that'll be a product line that puts 4 to 5 million vehicles on the road every year.
Mhm.
When once it's fully ramped at all their factories around the world, and having the option to upgrade every single one of those vehicles to autonomy via an over-the-air software update, that is going to be absolutely insane in terms of transforming the valuation of just vehicles in generally, and huge financial catalyst for Tesla too.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome. I think that was good.
It was good.
All
Yeah.
right. Sweet. All right. Well then let me switch. All right, let's move on to Elon's CNBC interview. Specifically, I'd like to talk about just the slapback he did on free speech, and then maybe even talk about his work from home uh, ideology. I guess saying that's morally wrong. Um, so I guess I'll do this. I'll talk about the work from home piece. Uh, he did mention on that it actually is a moral issue, and so I even though I'm an Elon fanboy, everybody who knows me knows that he can do no wrong in my eyes. However, that's not entirely true. I I really am kind of wondering. I currently work in a job where I can be remote 24/7, and I appreciate that fact. And I can also appreciate that there's still jobs out there where people need to go in, and that's how their value is created, by actually being in that specific place to do the specific thing. And so I think it really, for me, it's like how a business should be focused on the value it creates as opposed to creating structures to force everybody into the same funnel, despite the value it creates. And for me, I if you were to run an analytic on my performance over the past 2 years from working from home, it it just would be a no brainer of like one, my quality of life has changed significantly by just being able to get out of bed, see my daughter, and then I can come back to work. And once a meeting ends, I can go see her. If my wife needs help, I can just go help her, and I can still deliver the same output, if not more, by doing that because you're eliminating my drive time, the stress of all of that, just trying to get to work on time, and then obviously a safety, removing all of that concern from my life to actually get to the job, um, and then sometimes I'd have to leave early in order to get to a certain appointment or whatever because I'm no longer close to my home. Um, and so, yeah, it just, to me, I don't know how much it is necessarily a moral issue. I get the team culture, like if you remove people, then it automatically disassociates you in some way from the team. But just even in my environment today, half my team is fully remote. So even if I came into an office, it doesn't, it still would not make sense because I'm still getting on a virtual call in order to talk to people. So I don't know, Dane. What do you think?
Two sides to, I mean, so I work in, I've been working remote pretty much since the beginning of the pandemic. Part of it was because we were all forced to work from home, and then I needed to relocate, and most of my team just happens to be based in a different country. So I I get that, you know, having worked remotely for a long time, I know that I can be productive. And I think that for some jobs it makes sense, for some jobs it's more feasible, and for others it's not. I can also I can also see where Elon is coming from. I mean, I think it's important for people that don't know the backstory. Uh, Tesla is, you know, very successful today, and they're printing billions of dollars, but it hasn't always been that way. And Elon was the guy that was, when the company was on the verge of bankruptcy multiple times, literally sleeping on the factory floor, trying to get them through production hell, and financing crises and things like that. So I think I can sympathize with where he's coming from, in the sense that, you know, it would be morally wrong for Elon as the chief executive to be working from home when he runs a manufacturing company that could very well go bankrupt because of not being able to successfully ramp up production.
Yeah.
So I can see where he's coming from uh, in that regard, but I don't think it applies to every industry. I don't think it applies to every job. I think that some people can actually be a lot more productive working from home than they can by going into the office. It just depend. It really depends on what the job is. Now, do I prefer working from home, or do I prefer working in person? Personally, like honestly, I would 10 out of 10 be in person. Um, you know, every day, if I could, if my team was close to me. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. I think that there's something that you miss when you're fully remote, from a social aspect, but then also just from an impact standpoint. I think it, especially if you were working in an organization that was like heavily centered around the product and making the product better. Obviously, it makes sense to be in that kind of field.
Hmm.
If you're a product manager or an engineer, working on physical things, it makes a lot more sense to, you know, I can see how you would be more productive, being in that environment, and actually have a better impact on the company by you being there in person.
Hmm.
But like I said, it depends. it's not a one size fits all. In some areas it makes sense, in some areas it doesn't. And so, do I think that it's morally wrong? No, not necessarily. It a lot of it comes down to context.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm always just wanting to think forward, and it feels like if today you were to have all companies go back into the office with the technology that COVID thrust forward with online work, it just seems to me a huge step back, especially with all this push to be net zero. Like companies are talking about going net zero on things, yet they're going to still force their people to get in their internal combustion engine cars to spend the gas to get to the job. It just doesn't. It seems like just does not make sense, and it seems like a huge time sink for most jobs. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering, are we just kind of in that half step as we continue to move forward with robots actually doing the mundane tasks or just even the regular tasks that humans do? Uh, could we not get to a place where even those on-site jobs are remotely managed by a person embodying a robot for the day?
Hmm.
Um, it seems like that would. So I guess in the current state, I can see where Elon's consternation is with trying to get people in. But it seems like in the very near future, all the people that you're needing to actually come in to get the job done, you could actually just have them stay at home, and actually
Hmm.
probably be even more effective at that job, because then they could even like imagine just being able to port yourself over to different robots across the work landscape, and you could
Hmm.
now you're not just stuck in your own little body to have to maneuver everywhere. You could actually port your intelligence just all around to these different robots.
Hmm. So essentially having like a digital twin of the real world and porting yourself
Yeah.
into like actually seeing the virtualized version of what is actually happening in the physical world. Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a technological standpoint, we're getting there. Uh, to be seen or to be determined how similar that experience is, of like doing something virtually versus actually doing something in person, being able to, like see, like the virtual things will get to a point where they're almost indistinguishable from reality. So maybe the vision part of it is different, but then there's smell, there's picking up on things like body language. I think it'll be incredibly difficult to completely mimic that. I think that there will always be something that you get from the physical experience that you cannot replicate in the virtual experience. I think we'll get really close, but yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the AI discussion. Like how will you know if an artificial intelligence agent is actually capable of things like empathy? Like what are those human things that cannot be replicated by machines? I think there's a parallel to be drawn between that and experiencing things virtually versus physically as well.
Yeah, but I guess maybe then could you separate the work versus the culture? Because right now we're trying to integrate culture into the work, but what if you had an environment where you're getting the work done in a robot, and then outside of that, teams are coming together and meeting together in that's outside the context of actually getting the work done, and you're still
Hmm.
creating the togetherness. You're cultivating that. It's just not in tandem with getting the job done. I don't
Hmm.
know, and maybe you're saying
Yeah.
you can still miss something there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, think about it. Think about it like this, right? Take a company like Apple. Apple, for example. Picture yourself. You're a part of the Apple product development team, and one of the things that Apple prides himself on is the packaging that their goods come in. They've spent a lot of time focusing on like the process of opening up packaging, how it feels, the textures of the different materials, how they all work together to create this like unboxing experience that when you're unboxing it, you're like, wow, man, this is cool. Like this
Yeah,
is an
yeah.
Apple product. I think that some things like that, like I said, that are more closer to the actual physical product, in those scenarios, it makes more sense to be in person, to be working in person. It doesn't make sense for the person leading that development to just be like sitting behind their laptop, like sending instructions to a team that's actually going to be doing the work. And I think that is what Elon is getting at in this terms of morality. It's like executives or like people trying to sit on their moral high horse and saying someone else must go and do that, like I'm above that, but instead, like, versus actually like being there in person and doing this stuff for yourself. I think that's where he's coming from, because he is a very hands-on CEO that does work the factory floor. His desk and all of his meetings are like held in this place where you can oversee the entire Austin production line in Austin. So that's just the kind of CEO that he is. And obviously, he works in an environment where the physical product is everything. The manufacturing process, the manufacturing process, like it's the machine that builds the machine, is as much of a product as the products that they build.
Mhm.
So I can see where he's coming from in his, and I think that it would be I can see where he's coming from in the sense of in the morality point, but I don't think that it applies to everything equally, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, fair point. I don't want to tangent too far, but I
Go
guess
for it.
if you can if you can mimic reality to an extent, like you're talking about the touching and the feeling of and smelling of the thing, if we were to actually achieve that, would that then be convincing enough to be like, because I think of even what MKHB
MKBHD.
KBH, yeah, he
Marquez.
yes, Marquez.
Legend.
Sorry, I butchered the acronym. But he did a Google exclusive with one of their Starlight, I think it is. And I, for me, it looked like really gimmicky at first, but then actually seeing Marquez's um, demo of it, I was like,
Hmm.
whoa, okay, I see that in a whole new way of like literally feeling like I'm in that room with that person. I'm not needing all this hardware. I'm in it. And like if I was to surround myself with my team in that way where we're able to show product and stuff like that, but then going even one step further where maybe you do have like uh, some haptic gloves where you can actually reach out, touch the object. What does that feel
Hmm.
like? I've even heard of some tech where you can touch something and you can actually feel the texture difference between touching marble and touching wood.
Hmm.
That's totally virtual. So
Yeah.
if yeah, I don't know. If you can bridge the divide in a digital sense like that, does that does that then solve that problem? I,
Yeah, I think technologically we're still some ways away from that. So that demo is we'll put a maybe a
yeah.
link to the video down below so people can go and check it out. It's really cool, but it's like it's me as a person talking to one other person on a screen. You've got like a bunch of these different cameras and lidar sensors and everything to map the 3D environment. It looks super realistic, but think about like if you had a meeting with multiple people and you were sitting at a conference table, for example. I don't think that you would get the same experience from having each person beamed in on one of those, because you're still looking at a screen, and even though the person in the screen like looks 3D and looks super realistic, it's still not going to be the same experience because you're still going to see these box frames around them. So until it's like unless you have like literally a hologram technology where there's no screens around it, it's just there's a table, there's seats, and maybe you have a pair of AR glasses on or something like that that creates this digital version of a person. And if you reach out, you've got maybe some haptic gloves on, you reach out, high five them, and you can feel that sensation. I mean, maybe. maybe you'll replicate some sense of that, but it just seems like super over engineered, doesn't it? Like every time you have to, if you want to have one of those meetings and stuff to get the real in-person experience, you have to have like all of this like really expensive technology versus you could have actually just flown those people in for the same prices.
I
Oh, okay.
mean,
I guess the cost of the equipment gets amortized over the number of uses versus flying in and out is like that's a continual expense every time. But do you see what I'm saying? Like in the sense that is it worth like is it worth developing that? And maybe there's just going to be cases where that does find its product market fit, but will not necessarily be applicable to every scenario.
I I think right now what we think is an over engineering, like, and because you're right, like if we had to look at our current tech today, that to engineer something that mimics reality just seems like, man, you gotta cobble together all this different tech to actually make this happen. I just think that's just I don't know. It's not. It seems like a lot of work right now. But
Hmm.
just if we look at the progression of tech, things that seem totally impossible and impractical, uh, even 20 years ago, we're looking at and we're like, oh, that's all in my pocket now. And so I don't know. I think you're right. The form factor, the ability to just literally pop on some glasses, and that should be the effort required.
Hmm.
But I think even now, if you were to give me five different like instruments to be able to put on and say, now now I'm in that virtual environment, I would still much rather probably do that than do the hour drive to work and back home every single day.
Hmm.
And then even thinking of the additional value add of now everything's digitalized with that new solution. It,
Hmm.
it it would solve the problem of still of what I've argued is the object permanence problem, especially for companies that are global and not just in one spot. Um, you you go to an office because you think you solved the object permanence problem, which is you have something in your face, and then you have something revealed, and you know where it is in the world now. So you go to an office, and you're like, well, I know where sales sits, I know where marketing sits, so I can just go up and talk to them. But I with a global company or just even multi location company, you can you can't solve that even in a physical environment. You can only solve that in a digital one. Um, and we still struggle with that because we talk on 2D screens all day long. We still have that object permanence that we deal with, but uh, I just think if you can fully digitalize and you can mimic reality in that way, I think you then can um, you can deliver more value than forcing people into an office. We totally went on a tangent. Uh,
Total tangent.
so
Future of work.
future work. So
Future work.
yeah,
It'll be
maybe
interesting.
something to dive in further on a different day. But yeah,
Yeah. And there's a lot that we can explore in that regard as well. I know Zoom is obviously dependent on remote work continuing to be a thing, and they're trying to do things to make that experience feel more connected. But I think that the amount of effort that they're putting into replicating the in-person experience, trying to synthesize that, it just shows it's validation of why being face to face and seeing people and being able to shake someone's hand or see their nonverbal communication and things like that. It's validation of why all of those things are important for us as humans, for us as social beings. Do you need to be, does everyone need to be working in person in order to be able to do their jobs? I don't think so.
yeah,
I think that there's plenty of scenarios where working remote does make sense, especially if you're working on a completely software-based product. Um, you can do everything that you need to do from your computer.
hmm
um, and so from a productivity standpoint, I think it just depends. um, I don't think that it can be said one way or another that it's 100% morally wrong, 100% not morally wrong, because it's so situational. Anyway, alas.
Yes. Clearly, we have more to unpack on this topic,
Yeah.
so we'll definitely do that more. But agreed. Currently, a moral issue till we create an environment where it is equal among everybody. Uh, and like you said, it's not a one size fits all
Hmm.
when it comes to it being a moral issue for companies. So
Hmm.
awesome. Well,
Cool.
do we want to talk about the second point from the
Second
CNBC?
point from that interview.
Yeah,
Yeah, free speech. What
free
are your
speech.
thoughts?
Oh man. Well, first off, I just I can't appreciate more that we have one of the richest person in the world um, standing firm on his conviction and not just staying in his ivory tower. Um, and so, just for those that didn't watch the interview, uh, we'll put the clip in real quick.
At all, but what I'm trying even came up though in the annual meeting. I mean, do your tweets hurt the company? Are there Tesla owners who say I don't agree with his political position and I know it because he shares so much of it? Or are there advertisers on Twitter that Linda Yaccarino will come and say, you got to stop, man, or I can't get these ads because of some of the things you tweet.
I'm reminded of there's a scene in The Princess Bride, great movie,
Great movie.
where he confronts the person who killed his father. And he says, offer me money, offer me power. I don't care.
So you just don't care. You want to share what you have to say.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just loved that the fact that he even quoted Princess Bride was just epic, right? But yes, the give me money, give me power. I don't care. Like, just yes, it's so good. Yeah.
I'll say what I say, and if the consequence is losing money, then so be it. I mean, that's a big smackdown, and I think everyone has a large lesson to learn from that. Free speech is, I think, the most fundamental right. It
Mm-hmm.
is the right that enables you to have any other right: freedom of expression, freedom to challenge positions of authority without fear of consequence. Those are all that is fundamental to being able to have other rights. Without that, you don't have anything else. So kudos to Elon for not, he's never been the type of guy that, what you would think of a typical CEO, but kudos to him for staying true to his beliefs and for fighting for everyone else's right to speak freely as well.
Yeah.
And encouraging people to speak freely. I think a lot of people these days, especially because the political climate seems to, the left and the right seem to be going further and further away, and yeah, so it's making it harder for people to have conversations because things are becoming so polarized. But I totally lost where I was going with that.
It was profound, whatever it was.
Hey.
Yeah, I
God,
will
sorry.
say, just while you're thinking about it, even the interviewer, he was trying to fish him on the basis of money, but we could translate money personally to just like what our popularity is. Like by saying a thing and speaking what we believe is true, we are putting at risk our popularity, our notoriety, all of those things. And Elon, in his position, obviously has tons of influence, and obviously tons of money, and so that's why he framed the question in that way. But I think we can, like you said, kind of can take away for our own personal selves that if you don't speak the truth, or at least what you know as far as what truth is, um, you are. It's almost an injustice to the world to not have the conversation or to not say the
Mhm.
thing, even if you're wrong. It's worth speaking.
That's exactly where I was going. What I was trying to articulate and didn't do a very good job of is there's so much divisiveness because people are getting so, it seems like the left and the right are getting so far away from each other, and there's so much fear about saying things, and so as a result we tend to self-censor
Mm,
ourselves because of fear of retaliation or fear of consequence. Or um what are my family members going to think about it? What are my friends going to think about this? I think I've seen more like news stories and articles about people losing friends and just losing relationships because of not being able to have political conversations, um particularly prevalent on college campuses too. But I think that it's more people should speak their mind, because speaking their mind and not being afraid to be wrong, not
yeah.
being afraid to to be challenged in your worldviews, because that's how we grow. It is through dialogue and through conversing and through the battling of ideas that we discover more things about ourselves, about society, about the world. That is a part of the process. It's not something that should be veered away from. It's something that we should embrace, and that's why free speech is so fundamentally important. But acting on it and actually speaking freely is just as important too. What's the point of having the right if you don't exercise it?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, even go towards the Twitter route of what he's done on that platform, like he's submitting himself to that same scrutiny on his own platform. And
Absolutely.
and I think what's great about that too is like even me, like if I have enough humility to know that, hey, I might say something that's totally wrong, but I'm going to say what I believe is true, and I'm totally open to being held accountable and being called out and saying, hey, that actually wasn't. And he's creating
Mhm.
a platform for those that have that humility to be like, hey, I'm on this journey with all of y'all. This is what I think, and I can be corrected, and
Mhm.
that's great for me because I learn, I grow, and I don't have to stay in my little microcosm of belief and my own vacuum. I can open myself to other perspectives and ideas, and not then also have this risk of being canceled. Um,
Mhm.
it's for our mutual benefit, for
Mhm.
all of us to then grow together. Because
Yeah.
if I then know the truth about a thing, that's just a net positive to everybody. If I then live
Mhm.
that out. Um,
Mhm. Community notes, I think, is the most impactful and most profound feature that Twitter has put out. And I would be shocked if companies like Facebook, like Google, any other social media platform didn't institute a similar feature on their platform, because it is inherently good. It is designed to incentivize people to tell the truth. So this feature, it's crowdsourced. It's basically anyone can opt in and become a member of Community Notes, and you can essentially fact check things. If someone tweets something that is misleading or makes a false claim, then people can get together and crowdsource where the truth actually comes from, and provide and tag a note and say, "Hey, this is misleading for XYZ reason."
mhm.
That is incredible. And the fact that Elon and now Linda Yaccarino, the new CEO, are willing to let Community Notes stick a note on an ad and say this ad is misleading, and be okay with losing money from those advertisers because they're putting misleading content out there. It's like, well, why pull your ad from it? Why not just correct the information? It's an easy fix. Just don't mislead people. Don't lie to people. And so I think it's such an awesome feature. I would love to see it implemented into other social media platforms, because it incentivizes the truth, and that benefits everyone.
Yeah.
It benefits everyone, and no one is above it. Elon has been community noted, and he laughed it off. Advertisers have been community noted. The White House gets community noted all the time. It doesn't matter whether you're a government official, whether you're a company that is paying Twitter money. It doesn't matter, because what matters most is the truth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that feature is incentivizing the truth.
Yeah, and it does. It goes back to addressing this problem I think Elon's trying to address, is this people over profit. Businesses, their goal isn't to make employees happy. The goal is to make their shareholders money. And we have just fallen prey, businesses have fallen prey to that reality over and over again, and have sacrificed at that altar the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of doing actually what is right. I'm not, and businesses do the right things, but typically it's under the lens of how can we make more money out of this. And Community Notes is totally anti going after that, because it's going to expose untruth and bias. And so I couldn't respect him more for that. And I think that's why when people want to hate on billionaires, the great thing about when you get to a point where you're financially free, to if you harness it the right way, like I feel like Elon's doing, you're focusing on the moral issues and focusing on the people rather than how much more money can you put in your pocket.
Yeah, talk about philanthropy. Spending $44 billion to make sure that everyone can speak freely on the platform and have their freedom of speech protected. It is an act of philanthropy in a way, because Twitter was not behaving in a good way. They were censoring people at the instruction of government agencies, political figures, like you name it. You can go and do research on the Twitter files to see exactly what they've exposed. But the bottom line is that censorship was happening, and censorship is not a good thing, because freedom of speech is important. So yeah, that gift to humanity platform where where the goal is to incentivize the truth and be entertaining. So what more could you want from the guy, really?
Yeah, that's amazing. And just saying it out loud, it just seems so obvious. Why would we not pursue that? But I think at the end of the day, it's really greed. That's what it comes down to, and we've fed that beast for far too long. And good on Elon to actually make that call, to actually do what he believes is right. So
yeah, totally agree. I get a little smile on my face every time I see a community note. Get noted, son. Like it's so like just tell the truth. Like don't be misleading. It's awesome.
All right, cool, man. We made it through point 2, and we're at time.
2 points and we're at time. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to the Pursuit of Progress podcast. We sincerely appreciate you being here. So, like the video, subscribe, drop us a comment, leave your feedback. We read everything. So yeah, have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Woo!